Hey guys, welcome back to another video. I thought I might do something different today and show the project file for my new song, All I Know. There's quite a lot going on right now within the project, of course. You can see there's quite a lot of tracks. So for these first 16 bars, I thought I might set the mood and have a few pads as well as some background noise from this serum patch. We have this dark atmosphere sound. Sounds very dark. And we have this pad as well. I'll get into mixing later. And we also have this bass which plays these notes. And I also found this sample. I thought it sounded really cool, so I added it as well. And then for the next 16 bars, I thought I might add a piano. It's playing chords, as you can see. And right above it is playing a massive patch that plays these notes. And then it starts introducing other parts, such as this other pluck. And then this other bass also comes in. And we also have this part that sort of introduces the main synth. And then there's sort of a bridge between the sections. This is where the hi-hats start to play. There's this new section, but they kind of fade between each other. This one rises, the frequency to the EQ over here rises, so over time it becomes more open. But then up here the volume rises, so it sort of fades. Everything's the same basically. And then this next section introduces a piano, which is very, very interesting. But as you can see, this loop has stopped and there's this new loop that's introduced, which is just a percussion loop that plays like a clock sound. Then there's a piano sound for all those music theorists. I don't know if you can tell, it starts in 3/4, continues until halfway through after 2 bars. That plays in 4/4 as usual, and it sounds really, really interesting. On its own, it sounds a little bit messy and unorganized, but it works. But for the rest of these 8 bars, there's no more hi-hats, the bass stays, and pretty much everything else stays. But there's this new riser section sort of, and it's just a washed out sort of version. It kind of gives it an interesting tone because it sort of rises at the end. And then there's quite a few new riser sections here. But there's this new lead that sort of plays this pattern. And then there's this final bass, which copies MIDI from here but uses this patch, and it fades out as well. Now to go through each of the mixing processes and all of the layers, we'll do it top to bottom. Starting with these hi-hats, I got a sample, high-passed it a lot, even though it's already high-passed, and then I added delay and reverb, and then more reverb. If the reverb here didn't really fit the hi-hats, so I added a separate reverb. And then you can see I also panned it. This way it doesn't stay static when I play it back. And then for this first bass that plays, it's just a flute, but I've taken it all the way down here. Normally it would sound like this. It's a bit harsh because of the EQ. Playing it like this makes it sound like a bass. And then there's this bass as well, and it's just a sub from a preset, and I've just turned it into a sub using this macro. And it's mono as well, which is really good because then I don't have to mix it at the end. And then starting with these synths, I've grouped these 3 together because they're basically the same preset, so that's why I've also got this EQ, because I wanted to process them together. But starting with this one, I made a serum patch that sort of mimics reverb, where there's like a release tail over here, and that goes to the volume. I've set it to inverse the detune of the unison. You can hear there's like somewhat reverb. There is some reverb over here, but without it. Yeah, it just adds to the reverbness of it. And before you say there's any reverb here, there isn't. This is all that there is. And it starts with an EQ. This is the sound without any EQs at all. Very, very harsh on the highs and everything. Firstly, high passing it so that we don't get any low frequencies. And then I also put a little bit of a high shelf over here. Just made it go down like 5 decibels. And then it sort of filters out a little bit. But then there wasn't too much presence over here in the mids, so I just added a little bit over here around 1 kHz, like around 5 decibels maybe. And then I added this audio effect rack, where the first one, it turns it stereo wide using the width knob over here in the utility, and then there's an EQ that just makes it so you don't really hear some frequencies, and then over here it's just the mono signal. But together they sound nice. And then there's this one, a lot more going on, but there's basically very small changes done to like the processing between the two. And then over here's the pluck. But I did put this EQ just to remove some lows to control the high mids area a little bit more. And then we have this other pluck, exact same EQ, but it's a different preset. And then we've got this piano. I used the tape piano preset from Labs, but you can hear there's quite a lot of flow over here. So I turn this on, and it gives us this really big high boost, but that's because there's not a lot anyways. Then I added a compressor. God knows what that does. And then there's this Serum preset from Virtual Riot, and it plays some background ambience at night. And as you can see, I've EQ'd it a little bit harshly, but I'm just separating the highs and the mids. And then there's this lead sound. I kind of did this thing where I got a triangle wave, and I just put some reverb and a really strong high pass. And at the end here, I don't know if you've noticed, but there's also MPE, and it just pitches this down. I couldn't be bothered doing it in a whole pitch wheel setup, so I just did it through the MIDI here. And then for this synth loop, this is it without any automations. I started by putting a high pass and a very, very big dip over here, around 2 kHz. Sounds a lot less muddy. And then I put some kilohertz reverb on it, but then I also put hybrid reverb, and I put a chime sample on it. It's meant to be used for making sounds for color bass, for example, to add tonality to all the bass sounds in dubstep, to make it sound colorful. But I did something different here, where I put it on the synth loop, so by the time I get here it's at 0. But it's a nice effect to wash it in. And then after we have this pad. I didn't want all these frequencies in the sound, so I removed a lot of the lows over here. But then I just boosted this one up a little bit, around 160 Hz. And then there's a couple of dips over here and here. This one's a high shelf. And then there's more EQing done, as you can see. It kind of removes this frequency and boosts these ones. And then there's this group. I only made it a group because I froze this, but there's only some EQing here. And I thought it sounded a lot like what you'd find in Minecraft. So I put it in the song just because it sounded like that. And as you can see, I put some high pass over here. So I've took down a little bit more over here, but then I also took out some harsh frequencies. Basically what it does is, the top one is being taken down by negative 9.3 decibels. That's because we put on a pitch map, but we also high passed it over here. So we only get these high frequencies going into the pitch map. You can kind of hear the pitch map at the top if you messed with it before. And the other one's just another EQ, but it sort of cuts out these frequencies instead. And then I run it through another EQ just to finish off. These two, I haven't really processed them. This one, however, is just from the freeze done over here. There's a little tail at the end, so I just reversed it and put it over here. And then we have this sound over here, a lot of processing done. And then we have the mixing process over here. So I started with an EQ, and I gave it more highs, but also some more low mids. And then you can see it's a little bit louder. And I put this other EQ set to mid-side mode. Starting with the mids, we've kind of boosted the lows a little bit more. But then when we go to sides, we just outright cut out all of these low frequencies. And then I added a dip over here where it sounded a little bit harsh. And then I very, very slightly raised the highs over here. And then I added this sausage fanner as well. And then I put a limiter on the top. And then there's this limiter at the top just to stop everything from going above 0 decibels. And that's pretty much all I did for this song. If you like this song, make sure to follow me on SoundCloud. I do upload my songs there. Also make sure to join my Discord server because over there you will be notified when a new video is dropped or a new song is released. The links are in the description and on my channel page, so be sure to click on them and join everything. And I just wanted to state again, I am working on the 100 sub special. At this time of recording, I don't know how many subs I have. Last time I checked, I have 97, but it could very much have changed. But anyways, until we meet again.